In this module, we're going to be talking about active or reflective listening and why that skill is really important for small group leaders. Just have a question or two for you all before Mark gets started. What would you say is the difference between hearing and listening? Like, let's just lay that groundwork. What's the difference between hearing and listening? I say this to my husband all the time. Are you listening to me? He says, yes, you said this, you said this, you said this. And I'm like, okay, so you heard me, but are you listening? So what's the difference between those two things?
Attention.
Attention? What do you mean?
Attention on the person speaking. Yeah, you can be hearing it, but focus. Have your focus on that person.
Good.
I think another thing might be empathy. Like, I'm not just hearing your words, I'm trying to feel what it is you're feeling.
A good listener is empathetic. That's very true.
Yeah, I feel like that involves some sort of processing in your head of what that person is saying, thinking of questions about it, not just like receiving what they're saying. There's like a little process.
I have to stop myself all the time from thinking about what I'm going to say. Like, stop my own thoughts about what I'm going to say back and just actually listen to that person.
Yes.
That's good.
Making it a no judgment zone kind of in that time.
That's good.
And allowing them to say their complete thoughts. Sometimes for me, I want to interject because I feel like I'm going to forget what I want to say. And I think it's so important. But, I think I actively giving them the time to say exactly what it is that they're saying.
That's good.
Yeah. Good. Anybody else?
I think for me, it's the understanding piece, right? Actually understanding what's being told to me. So instead of being able to just repeat a bunch of facts, actually understanding why those facts are important to that person.
Good.
What the story is. And why
Yeah.
it's important.
So I think we can agree. Would you agree active or reflective listening is a learned skill? It's not something you know how to do automatically. So have no fear. We have some training for that.
Yes, we do. I promise, out of my 4 years Bachelor of Training in Ministry and my 2 years in a Master's in Counseling, after all of that stuff, the skill I use the most is one I learned at church called Becoming a Godly Listener. And then Apples of Gold 1, which is from the proverb, a word aptly spoken is like an apple of gold in the setting of silver. And the key to having a word aptly spoken is know when to not speak words and when to listen. And that listening class and what I've learned there, I use it in my marriage. It's what's kept me alive, kept my wife from burying me in the backyard. It's the thing I go to most in ministry. There are other skills that you will use in group facilitating, but they're all like power tools. And the power source is this listening. They'll all go better under a foundation of listening. And Mimi said it well. I think of it as listening to their heart, listening to a person's heart. That's what we want to do. So it's passive listening is where you just don't interrupt them. And that's better than probably 80% of their interactions they've had that week or whatever. So just passive listening is something, but it doesn't have it doesn't feed their soul and spirit with the nutrients that will help them to grow in the same way that active, reflective listening is. And we'll go through it, and it's not complicated. It's not rocket science, and yet it's so hard to get ourselves to do it, right? So I want to kind of just, again, a preemptive strike on that. These are some of the reasons, the other things that we might do instead of listening. And as I go through the list, see if you recognize yourself in any of these. Instead of listening, we might argue, we might dismiss, we might contradict, we might make commentary about what's been said. Oh, that's too bad. Or we might tell tangential stories. We might hijack their story to talk about ourselves. We might project our own reaction into their story. And we might attempt to give answers. All of that, it seems natural for us to do, but it's not listening. It's not listening. And you think, well, I would never argue with someone until they said, yeah, God doesn't love me. Well, God loves you. He loves everybody, right? So I'm a loser and I'm worthless. You're not worthless. So it's not always coming out of a bad intention that we would do these things. But whenever we're doing these things, we're not listening. We're not listening to their heart, and we're not receiving them as they are. So listening, probably some of you have had a listening training somewhere, right? For work, it's a very popular thing in the corporate setting these days. So I want to review it, but so simple that we can all remember how to do this. And listening, reflective listening, is a little bit science and it's a little bit art. So I'll talk about the science of it first. So it has a couple of distinct points. The first is we're going to reflect the feeling. We're going to listen for the feeling, and we're going to reflect that. So generally speaking, us men are a little behind on the feeling thing. We're not really reinforced for sitting around sharing our feelings the way ladies might. And we don't find it recreational to sit around and tell each other how we feel about stuff. It's not in our makeup. We don't generally do it, not comfortable usually. So this is a challenging part for us in doing a reflective statement where we're going to reflect someone's emotions, because our emotional vocabulary probably is like hungry, tired, mad. That's like as good as we know, right? So, but even us men, even we can reflect the feeling. Generally speaking, most of the emotions would fit in one of 5 categories: mad, sad, glad, scared, or confused. Mad, sad, glad, scared, or confused. Now, you'll get in a conversation, and those of you that have a very broad feeling vocabulary will say, well, what about this word? It doesn't fit in there. You will find some exceptions. But generally speaking, mad, sad, glad, scared, or confused. So fellas, it just changed this from an essay question to multiple choice. I always love me some multiple choice because I know the right answer is there. I just got to figure out which one it is. Essay, you got to know this stuff. There's no bluffing. So I'm going to turn this into a multiple choice question. So you went from like man words to 5 possible emotional categories: mad, sad, glad, scared, confused. Now, I'm going to turn 5 into 15 like this. When you're thinking about emotion comes in different intensity, right? There's mad, there's furious, there's peeved. There's sad, there's grieving, there's bummed. Feelings come in intensity, right? So we got our 5: mad, sad, glad, scared, and confused. Keep in mind a little or really. So someone's talking about that they're mad, so you're angry, you're mad. So they're peeved, so you're a little mad. So they're furious, so you're really mad. So you're sad, you're a little sad, you're really sad. So you're confused, you're a little confused, you're really confused. We just went from 0 to 5 to 15, which is mad, sad, glad, scared, confused, a little, or really. And I tell you, if you do that for people, people think they're going to figure me out, they're going to think I'm just mimicking them. Like that game you play where you say what they say right after them and it gets real irritating. You think they're going to feel that way? Most people are going to be thrilled that someone has slowed down, set aside your own agenda to pay attention and listen to them. They won't notice. So you get the feeling: mad, sad, glad, scared, confused, little, really. And if you do a Google search on feeling word list, there are several that will come up. And what I've done is I'd go through that list and go, I'd never use that word in a conversation, but I go, oh, that's a good one. I'm going to remember that one. I could see me using that. And so you just start slowly building your emotional word vocabulary. So you're looking for those 5. So we're going to reflect the feeling, and you're going to reflect the content of what they say. And again, we've studied content similar to content and process. Content is the what? It's the facts of what they said. And what you're going to do is when people talk, if they're telling a story, the story may go all over the place and wind and go back and forth or whatever. And you could like panic going, Mark said I'm supposed to reflect the content. It's gotten so long and convoluted. I don't know how to reflect all this. So you don't have to reflect it all. But as they're doing content, you listen for the emotion. Because wherever they get around to the emotion, that's probably the core. That's probably the bullseye. Whenever in their narrative they start to reveal emotion, that's probably what this conversation is about. So I start with the emotion, and then I work backward to get the content. I say, out of all that narrative they told me, what part of that would explain them having that emotion? And it helps me narrow down a bunch of the things they said to say, well, they're mad because this happened. They're sad because this part of their story. And it helps you to kind of quickly pare out a whole lot of words down to the part that they're talking about. Now, when I first learned this, I learned to reflect the feeling, the content with a tentative opening. So you do sounds like, it seems like, so are you saying? And I got some feedback recently that changed my mind. So I would say that the parts of a reflective statement are reflect the feeling, reflect the content, and sometimes use a tentative opening, like it seems like, it sounds like. So here's when you would use it seems like, it sounds like. When someone's not using a feeling word. Like, it's like, I want to do active listening. Mark said I need to reflect the feeling. I'm waiting for their feeling word. And you're thinking they're not saying mad, sad, glad, scared, or confused. They're not using a feeling word. I don't know what to do. Some people they themselves don't have a big feeling vocabulary, or they're not self-aware enough to know what they're feeling, to give it a label. And so they're talking. But people will talk around the feeling sometimes. When my boss yelled at me in front of my peers, man, my blood was boiling. And I just started thinking, you don't talk to me like that. And I thought, if you go one more step, I'm going to set you straight, and then I'm walking out of here. What feeling is that person talking around? They're mad.
Yeah.
They're mad. Boy, I love being a school teacher, and the last day is hard for me. I went in the next day to clean out the classroom, and I just saw the places where the kids sat, and they're not there anymore, and I miss them. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself till September. What emotion is that person talking around? Sad. They're sad, right? So when people are talking around an emotion, it's probably good to say, well, it sounds like you're feeling kind of this. So it seems like maybe you're feeling this. And sometimes I just even question in my voice, so you're sad. And in those situations, that's helpful because sometimes a person doesn't use a feeling word because they haven't yet decided if it's okay for them to feel that way. I mean, depending upon what you're raised, Christians don't get angry. That's not Christian-like. And don't be sad. Have faith in God. Be joyous in all times, all things. So in their mind, they were thinking, I'm not allowed to feel that way. So they don't own it. And so we just offer it tentatively. Well, it sounds like maybe you're angry, you're sad, you're confused. And so when a thing is just offered like that, I consider it. And if I look at it, I might get the courage, and you seem to be kind and caring and interested, I might be able to own it and go, yeah, I guess I am. And so we do it with a tentative opening. Now, when a tentative opening is not great, is when a person they tell you a feeling word. They say, man, I was furious. Well, it seems like you were pretty angry. Well, yeah, because I just told you I was furious. I mean, it can seem a little patronizing, right? And I think sometimes beginning listeners felt awkward going, this seems weird saying it sounds like when they just told me what they said. So in those instances where someone says a feeling word, just acknowledge the feeling word. So you're really mad. You bet I am. Wow, so you're kind of blue about this. Yeah, I guess I really am sad about this. You can just acknowledge it, just say it. And I think it affirms them without distracting them, like, well, why are you saying it that way? But if they haven't said a feeling word, the tentative opening softens it a little bit, invites them to look at it, and they can decide if, yeah, I guess I just need to admit to myself, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling scared, whatever. So that's the science of a reflective statement. Reflect the feeling, the content, tentative opening maybe, or just acknowledge it. Now, some folks will hear that and they'll go, oh man, that's like so many parts and it's like too clinical, and what if I don't remember all the parts, I don't do it right. And so there's an art to listening. And the art of listening is like this experience that we probably all have had some point in our life. So you've seen this movie. You think, oh, this is a great movie. This is an awesome movie. I love this movie. You know who else would love this movie? Is so-and-so at work. I'm going to tell them about this movie tomorrow. Well, at the point you decide to tell them about the movie, you don't panic, go, oh, I should start taking notes so I don't miss it. You just give yourself to the movie. You're just watching it, right? And then the next day at the water cooler, your coworker comes by and goes, oh, you got to hear about this movie. You're going to love it. And so what do? You start telling them about the movie. And you tell them about all the drama in the movie. You know, the love, the betrayal, the injustice, the outrage. You tell them about the drama. And then you tell them about the plot. And so it had this twist, it had this turn. And there's like these little subplots that don't go anywhere. You just kind of weed those out. You know, and then this happened, and this happened. There was a problem, and there was an antagonist, and the protagonist came, and they solved the problem, and they were happily ever after. And you just tell them about the story, right? Well, what's the drama? That's the feeling. That's the emotional stuff, right? That's where the drama comes from, is the heart. And what's the plot? Well, the plot's the content, the who, what, when, where, how, right? So another way of doing reflective listening is as someone's telling you their story, just let it show a movie on your mind's screen. Just watch the movie. Enter into it. And as some of you mentioned, real listening, you have to enter into their world. So just let their words show the movie of their story on your mind. And just look for the drama. Where was there drama in their story? And you reflect that back. Which part of the plot explains the drama? And so it's more intuitive, it's more big picture, it's more general, and it's still effective. It still works for people. They still have a sense that you're with them, you're tracking with them. And they have a sense of being listened to, but also being seen. And that's what most of us, we're just wondering, does anyone see me? Does anyone hear me? And so we answer that question for them. So whether you do the science, the 3 parts, or the art, describing the movie, tell them what you've heard, and that will do it. Now, there's a few threats, a couple of things that will keep you from doing that. Again, it's not rocket science, it's not difficult to understand, and yet it's still difficult to do, especially if you're not used to doing it. So here's why you're going to not want to listen. It feels contrived. Like if you've never done it before, you're going, this is so fake. This is so not me. This is doesn't feel good, doesn't feel right. It's not natural. I'm just not a listener. Well, the deal is, most skills that we learned didn't feel natural at first. Like when you were learning to drive a car, like in driver's ed, you're trying to figure out how much do you turn the wheel and how much pressure do you put on the gas so it doesn't lurch, and how much pressure you put on the brakes so you don't do this, and you got to remember your turn signals in the mirror, and it's like so much stuff, you're overwhelmed. You could easily say, I'm not a driver. This is just not natural. This is contrived. This isn't me. I'm not a driver. And I guess like later generations, there's some kids that kind of did this. Yeah, driving's not for me. But back in my day, boys wanted to take girls out and girls wanted to go shopping. So we pushed through this uncomfortable feeling that feels contrived, and we learned to drive a car. My guess is, on your drive home, you're not going to think about how much you turned the wheel, how much pressure you put on the gas, how much you put on the brake. Hopefully use your turn signals. You might not remember. I've been on the outer belt and thinking to myself, realized I lost track of where I am. Did I miss my exit? And I started looking for landmarks to figure out where in the world I am. I did a whole lot of driving without thinking about it. It wasn't natural once, but it's natural now. And that's true with any skill. Maybe it doesn't feel natural to you now, but it could. Maybe you're not a listener now, but you could be. You practice the skill like any other skill, and at some point, it goes from being something you do to being who you are. So it feels contrived now, you just got to push through. It feels inadequate. Someone's telling you a huge, sad story. It's horrible. The pain is great. It's complicated. It's a big, tangled mess. And you say, and you want me to say, it sounds like you feel because, like that's going to be insulting to them. Their situation requires a better answer than that. Only if I were trying to solve it. But I'm not trying to solve it. I'm not trying to fix it.
Right.
So it doesn't need a big answer from me. What I'm trying to do is make sure they know they're not alone in their problem. And that's really all I can do, is like make sure they know they're not alone. Someone's with them. And I'll tell you, a bad situation feels a little bit better when there's someone with you. One thing to make a situation worse is when you feel alone. So we make sure they're not alone. And to do that, reflective listening is perfect. It's the right amount of thing for them to know, oh, you're tracking with me, you're with me, you hear me, you see me. So we push through. It feels inadequate. We go, oh, that's because I'm being sucked into, I think it's my job to fix, and it's not my job to fix. So I'm going to keep listening. Emotion, like just raw emotion coming at you, like rage or deep, desperate, hopeless sorrow, and we might all have like a particular emotion that we really don't like, and if we start hearing that, it's like, what do I do? What do I do? And it can happen from the family you grew up in. If my family, good, emotionally repressed German family, we didn't really do a lot with emotions. So someone starts talking emotions, like, I'm not comfortable with this. But it could also be the other extreme. In your family, lots of emotion, but it wasn't done well. Like there was yelling and screaming and sulking and cutting off, and it's like, I don't like emotion. It's messy and ugly and painful. I don't want to do it. So there can be reasons emotion comes at you. And you think, I don't want to do that. So I just take a breath and I just say, this is going to be better on the other side. They deserve to have their heart acknowledged. I'm just going to do it. And my least favorite emotion is hopelessness. Because I think, well, when you've lost hope, what are you going to do? How do you go on? You don't have hope.
Right.
And so I just have to make the words come out of my mouth. So you're feeling hopeless because I just make myself do it. I refer not to what I feel or what I can decide in a moment. I default to my training. And I've been trained to say, so your feeling is this because of this. And I just make myself do it because I know it has amazing power when I do that. Being misunderstood, falsely accused. Well, you Christians, you just want people's money, and the group leaders, you don't really care about us. You just run your little program, and you're thinking, no, that's not true. And the only thing worse than being falsely judged is being rightly judged. Oh, I hate that worst. You just been so insensitive. It's like, oh, crap, I have been. And so our first instinct is to want to defend and explain. So, well, yeah, but I didn't mean to. I was just having a bad day. So, no, we don't want your money. We just care about you. But God says we have to tithe and give money. And so we want to defend. But at the point I'm defending, I'm not listening. I'm not listening. I'm not joining them. I'm not receiving them as they are. And again, sometimes I have to make the words come out of my mouth. So you are furious with me because you see that I'm an idiot. And if that's what they're saying, I have to acknowledge it. And so it helps for me to kind of work out my issues, that emotionally wounded healer, emotionally, I forget my own words, wholeness, emotional wholeness.
Yep.
I have to have some kind of measure where if they come at me, it's like, oh, that stings. But I got to shake it off, walk it off. I got to stay with the process here. I'm listening to them now. And then later I can call my friend and go, oh, you won't believe this. My group called me out and they were right, and I felt embarrassed and humiliated. I work it out with my team later. But in that moment, I do my listening. What they're feeling, why they're feeling it. I stay with it. Impatience. So, if you do ministry for a while, you hear people's stories for a while, you start to recognize themes, trends, patterns. And so, someone in your groups is telling you this story, you go, oh, I know this one. I know how this one ends. Let me just save us all a bunch of time. I'll tell you the answer. Because this is boring. This is not a new story. I've heard this story before. Let's go. Speed this thing up. And so impatience may keep me from listening and dragging out, because I know if I listen, they're going to talk more. It's like, oh, so it sounds like you feel because this, we're talking. But the deal is, this is maybe the umpteenth time I've heard this story, but it could be the first time that they had the courage to tell their story. And so I just got to tell myself, it's not about whether I know how it ends, it's about if they know how it ends. And the fastest way to get there is to just listen to them. I just got to set aside my impatience. And I decide, do I have it in my budget to listen today? And oftentimes I do. It's just like, oh, especially introverts, just like, talking, feelings, oh. But I'm convinced there's so much power for healing and growth in this. It's worth doing. So I just say, I just got to It'll help me become more patient if I just listen, listen, listen. It'll help me stretch that muscle. I'll get better at it. So those are all the things that might keep us. Do you recognize yourself in any of those? Like, oh, yeah, I might tend
All
towards...
the above.
All the above? Thank you for your honesty, yes. So those are the things. But when you know, then when they start to happen, you recognize it. Oh, yeah, this is just that thing Mark talked about. It's trying to keep me from listening. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick with my training because I know it's powerful and it's life-giving. I'm going to do my training. So you're aware. Like if the devil's sneaking up on you, you don't want to listen to this person because they're judging you. That's wrong. So no, I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to listen to them. So again, when I ask someone to do a hard thing, I think they deserve to know, why am I asking you to do this hard thing? And there are some very good reasons why I would ask you to listen to someone. Even in the face of being judged, it feels contrived, there's emotion. Here's the things that listening, reflective, active listening does. It affirms the speaker by receiving their gift. When someone's telling their story, they're bringing out a treasure from their heart. They're bringing out a treasure from their holy of holy place. And they're offering that treasure to you or to the group. Imagine it's Christmas. You know how hard it is to figure out what to get people. And this one year, you're inspired. And you get your beloved family member the perfect gift. You just, God helped you. It fell in your mind. This is exactly the right gift. I have rocked it. And you start looking forward to Christmas, not for you getting presents, but because you're going to get to give them this present. You're going, this is going to be awesome. So Christmas comes, the family's gathered, and they got their presents gathered around them, and you see they're getting closer, they're getting closer, they're getting closer. Yours is next. They got yours, they unwrap it, they open the box, they go, oh, thanks. They set it down, they go to the next present. You're going, that's very unsatisfying. No, that's not what I wanted to hear, thanks. I wanted to hear, wow, this is awesome. It's exactly what I needed. I've been wanting one of these, and it's my favorite color. And I got a chance to use it this next week. I'm going to take it, I'm going to use it. Oh, thank you so much. When we give a gift, we want it to be received well. So if someone shares their heart in your small group, and you go, thank you for sharing. Who's next? They're like, was I not supposed to say that? That seemed like it made them uncomfortable. We just kind of skipped over it. I guess maybe I'm not supposed to share like that. And so when we listen, it's receiving the gift. So, Jennifer, you're feeling this because of this. Yeah. And when you reflective listen in the group context, it's not just that you're reflecting, it's like you're showing it to the whole group. Hey, group, did you see what Jennifer brought us? And they go, wow, he's saying it in front, or she's saying it in front of the whole group. And the whole group is, oh yeah, yes, that's a very good gift. It's a very good gift. So that reflective listening is part of how we receive someone's gift. It confirms understanding. Because I've been doing this a while, I'm pretty sure I'm right. In my mind, I think they're feeling this way because of this. They go, yeah, I got this. But I still have to say it out loud. So you're feeling this because this happened. And sometimes they go, no, not exactly. Mm-hmm. What? And sometimes it's because they misspoke or they didn't describe it well, or sometimes it's I just got juked. They made me think of something in my life and I'm reflecting my experience and I didn't listen to theirs. So when I say, it sounds like you feel this because of that, they are the one who determines whether I listened or not. And it's not until I hear, yeah, that's what's happening, that I have confirmed that I've in fact understood what they're saying. It demonstrates understanding. Now I could accurately understand. I go, yeah, I understand just what you're going through. How many people have found that helpful? When they, in fact, the natural reaction to being told, I understand just what you're feeling, is to go, how could you possibly understand just exactly what I'm feeling? Like we know that our experiences are all unique, right? Mm-hmm. And the deal is, if I tell you, I understand just what you feel, you know there's like a 33% chance that's right. Because it's possible I understand exactly what you're feeling. It's also possible that I think I do, but I'm wrong. And it's also possible I don't, but I don't want you to know that. So I can say, oh, I understand just what you're going through. They don't know. And most of the time they go, that's not good enough, I don't believe you. But when I say, it sounds like you're feeling this because of that, then again, they're measuring. Is that what I said? Yeah, yes, it is. All right, they're keeping up with me. Wow, that feels good. All right, yeah, they're interested. They're staying up with me. It encourages exploration and understanding. Some of the work that we got to do, we have put in deep places in our heart because it was horrible. And maybe when it happened to us, we were young and we didn't have coping skills and we didn't know what to do with it. And the thought of revisiting it is like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to ignore it and go forward. But the deal is that stuff doesn't go away. It just squirts out in inopportune times and places and causes havoc in our lives. So at some point, if we're going to be free of it, we're going to have to go back there and visit it. But that's a scary thing, and I really don't want to. However, if I had people around me that genuinely seemed interested, and they communicated and they expressed that they were good people, kind people, smart people, and they were inviting me to go there, maybe, just maybe, I could muster the courage to go there and talk about that and think about it, maybe even let myself think about it for the first time in a long time. So that listening without an agenda, without, I'm going to amaze them with my brilliance, or I'm going to tell them what the answer, none of that stuff. It just, go for it. Tell us your story. It gives them a chance to explore. And if they explore, it gives them a chance to get insight and understanding. Our listening creates a safe environment. It says, I'm not going to try to fix you to my way of thinking. I'm going to let you explore, and I'm going to let God fix you. But I'll go with you on the journey. It grows interest in, care of, and love for others. Listening, for me, has become a spiritual discipline. When I first learned the listening, we learned warmth, empathy, and respect. Warmth was communicating genuine caring. Empathy was communicating a desire to accurately understand. And respect was communicating unconditional high regard. And we learned these things, like doing a reflective statement and various things. And we were practicing in our small groups. We had breakout sessions doing our practicing, and we saw that it really did help. It worked. It felt good when someone did it for me, and I could see it was working for other people. My problem was there were many times I genuinely did not care. There were times I really wasn't that interested. And there were some times I did not have respect. Someone tells me about they hurt a child, I have a hard time respecting them. Other things, whatever your taboo is. And so I went to the Father and I said, all right, so here's the deal. I don't want to be a hypocrite. But I think you would treat people this way, with warmth, empathy, and respect. So I think if you were here in the flesh, you would treat them that way. And I think you would like me to treat them that way. So I'm going to treat them that way. But I just want you to know, I'm not trying to put on airs. I'm not trying to act better than I am. I just want you to know, I genuinely don't have those things going on. But I kept doing them. And what I noticed was, as I did more listening, I started to care more. Because I heard more of people's stories, and they were compelling. And I started to understand that sometimes there's reasons for the things people go through, and besides they're just a bad person or they're not doing it right. And even the folks who do horrible things, I learned that sometimes, before they were a predator, they were a victim. I go, oh, if I had gone through what they went through, would I be doing any better today? I don't know that I would. And so it even began to give me a sense of at least having respect for that they were created in the image of God. They're one of his children. They're someone that Jesus died for. At least I can give them high regard for that. So it became a spiritual discipline. As I did it over and over, it grew in my heart, in my spirit, that condition that is Christ-like. So it helped me in that way. As if you were fasting or praying, giving, serving, any of the other things, they shape us as we do them.
Right.
I found it to work that way. And it provides you with what to say next. There are times someone lays out a story and I think, I do not know what to say to this. It's like blowing my mind. I've never heard of such a thing. I can never conceive of such a thing. I don't know what would be helpful to say to them. I don't know how to answer that in a way that's going to make them feel better. I have no words. Well, reflective listening gives me my words. Reflective listening is like when you're in a play and you forget your lines, and someone off stage goes, they tell you your lines, and you go, oh, yeah, and you say your lines. Well, they're going to give you your lines as they speak. So all I got to figure out in terms of what to say next is what are they feeling, and what part of their story explains what they're feeling. And that's my lines. That's what I say next. And that, it's amazing what that does for people. And more than if I were to give them the right answer. because they kind of got to fight their own way for it. Like the little caterpillar has to fight its way out of the cocoon to be a butterfly. The little chick has to fight its way out of the egg to be a chicken. And sometimes people have to fight their way out of whatever this problem is they're in. And so me solving it doesn't help. But listening, being present with them, is cheering them on. It helps them to do this very hard thing that then makes them stronger and wiser and all the good work that God's trying to do in them. So that's why I think it's worth doing. Even as hard as it is, and as awkward as you might feel sometimes, to just stick to your training. I hear that you feel this because of this. I hear you, I see you.
Oh, that's so good. That's such an important skill for us. And I love how you said it's receiving a gift, and then it's also being a good listener is giving a gift. So there is a lot there,
Yes.
a lot of content there. Any questions from Mark about the skill of active or reflective listening that came to mind as you were listening to him?
I had one. So kind of going back to boundaries and mixing that a little bit with active listening. How do you determine, or is in your mind there a distinction between someone just wanting to vent and for them to verbally process? And in those instances, if that is the case, should you be engaged in active listening?
Good question. So there are times when you might think, if I'm active listening, am I engaging in gossip? Because they're talking about a beef they're having with someone else. As I'm active listening, they're getting angrier and angrier. Am I like putting gas on the fire? Is that a good thing for me to do? There may be situations when you would say, active listening in this situation might be beyond my skill level and above my head. And you could tap out. You could say, I want to stop us here because I can tell this is very, very important to you. But I'm starting to feel like I may not be enough to hear this and be a help to you. But I know some people who could. Can I put you in touch with? And that could be the pastor over my ministry, or our Growth and Healing Life Reset pastor, or whoever that you have. You could pass off to someone else. I've listened to situations where someone's telling me about the beef they have with someone else. And what I do to ensure that it's not gossip is, as I'm listening, I'm helping them process to get to the point where they're going to decide what they're going to do to go back into that relationship. My emphasis is going to be, all right, so let's process your emotions. So now tell me, what are you going to do next? And we work on that. Well, I don't know what I can do. Process emotion, so we get to, what are you going to do next? And the other thing that I do is, so someone's mad at Jennifer, and they're telling me about Jennifer and how she wronged her and was rude to her, and they tell me this big long story. And I think, well, I'm going to have to help get you ready to talk to Jennifer, and I know nothing about Jennifer based on this story. I don't know any of that's true. I mean, normally there's two sides of a story, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. Now, it's not always right in the middle. Sometimes it's closer to one side or the other. All I know is this is their perception of Jennifer. And they're mad at Jennifer. Well, I'm not mad at Jennifer. Jennifer and I are having a great relationship. I'm going to keep having a great relationship with Jennifer because this is the relationship we have. That's for them to sort out. And so I can't draw any conclusions about Jennifer. It can feel like, well, if I'm going to be your friend, I guess I have to be mad at who you're mad at, or I'm not loyal. No. Because honestly, I'm not just for you, I'm for us. I'm for the body of Christ. I'm for the church. I'm for us having unity. So I'm not going to entertain an ill thought on someone because I heard a story. Now, if there were a situation where I were too involved and I couldn't do that, I couldn't stay neutral enough, then I would tap out. I'd say, you know what? I don't know if I can listen objectively, and because of that, I might just entertain gossip. So I'm going to tap out here. Let's figure out someone that you could talk to. Maybe someone who doesn't know Jennifer, a Christian counselor, someone, because you need to figure this stuff out. You need to get the emotion out so you can think clearly, but I don't think I'm the right place for that to happen. So there's a bit of a judgment call. You measure the situation. You measure your ability to stay neutral, to stay positive, to not get sucked into hurtful stuff. And so it's okay to say, I'm not the best one to do this, or this maybe isn't the right time or the right way to do this. Good question.
That's good. Anybody else have a question on active or reflective listening?
again, it's not rocket science, it's not hard to understand.
And you'll get lots of practice.
Yes.
As you lead a small group, you get lots of practice.
Well, and I want to, that's a great reminder, I wanted to tell them this. I'm going to dare you, I'm going to leave you on this section with a dare. I dare you to start listening to people. Listen to the person next to you in line at the grocery store. Listen a little bit to your restaurant server. Listen to the parent at the soccer game. Just start practicing. Just start, and they won't know what you're doing, so they won't know how bad you are at it. And the deal is, you being bad at it is still going to be better than most of the interactions they have with other people.
Sure.
And any skill worth learning was worth practicing at it when I was bad, and I fought my way to mediocrity. And if it was important enough, I kept practicing till I started to get a little better. And if you keep at it, you can get great at it. But most of us don't start great. So you just kind of have to experience the humility of, oh, I'm not good at this yet. And you just keep practicing, you keep practicing, you keep practicing. So that's my dare. I dare you to start listening to people. And it'll be easier listening to strangers than like your spouse or your kids, because you got a lot of emotional history there, and they're going to say something that's going to trigger you, and you're going to be out of your listening zone or whatever. So casual friends, strangers, people at church that you're just meeting, practice on those folks first. And then when you get better, you can try with your kids and your spouse or your significant others or whatever. So that's my dare. And when you see me next around, tell me how you're doing with your dare, all right?
That's so good. All right, that wraps up our module on active reflective listening. Thank you for your attention and participating.